Hello, my name is Charla Weiss. I envision a life shaped by purpose, connection, and curiosity, rather than deadlines and titles.
Hey there. Welcome to the Redirect Podcast. This is where we dive into real conversations, share stories, and just hang out talking about finding our purpose in retirement. We're glad you're along for the ride, and let's get into it. Curt and Dale, good to be with you guys again. You guys have been living in your redirected life for some time now, a couple of years for the both of you. So I have a two-part question for you. First, what does success look like in your third?
Well, I am, I guess about a year and a half into my next 30, where I declared out on my LinkedIn page what my next 30 was going to look like. And I think for me, success is finding your purpose, which is why we really started all this. But truly, me getting up in the morning and being able to say, I want to serve my God, my family, and my community. And I think a really big part, though, of success is also finding community. It's changing the mindset of knowing you have to go out, you have to step out and find and make that community, because it's just not going to come to you like it did in the workplace. So for our next 30, it's kind of, the combination of both of those, having a purpose and taking the time to really understand what that is, and then go make a community around that not only supports you, but helps you achieve goals.
I love that. How about you, Curt?
Well, I pulled an Adam in the sense that I did a little Google.
You fired up the Google machine?
I did. Definition of success is the achievement of a desired goal or purpose. It's all based on where I am right now. So in looking online, they gave 4 different areas of success. So I'm going to evaluate myself. Emotional, achieving inner peace. No, I'm not there. Occupational, which is gone. Well, it isn't. I'm doing a part-time gig. And financial. I've done as best as I can do. Social, building strong and meaningful relationships with partners, family, and community. I'm doing my best there. I find myself that my community is not growing. It's staying static. And physical, maintaining my health, I'm doing a good job there. So if those are the success values of a person at any given time, and then now in my next 30, I've got some areas I got to work on.
So a great segue into the part 2 of that question is, if we've identified what success is there a recipe or a mechanism to achieve it?
If there is, I want to know it. I just had this conversation earlier with some guys that we get together every month to just sort of talk about how we're doing. And I'm at that point where I want a recipe. I want to be able to figure it out.
And I bet the ingredients to the recipe are different based on each of those segments, physical, emotional.
Yeah. One thing that they summarize, this little thing that I looked at, is rather than a single final destination, success is often a journey of continuous growth, which inherently includes overcoming failures and setbacks along the way. So guess what? In my next third, I am going to continue to have setbacks. I'm going to continue to learn from those setbacks. And I just have to be very intentional in order to see God working and to recognize that and to be open to what he's doing. And every season that I'm going to be having going forward within this last third is hopefully going to be different and building upon one another.
And I think something that Dale talks about frequently is growth. Your brain is the only thing that can still continue to grow. So Dale, part B to that question for you. What is a recipe, or is there a mechanism for achieving this success that you declared?
I think we have ingredients, and I think the ingredient right now is time, and it's a work in progress for me, because if I'm going to put together a recipe, I need to truly understand that, time is just one of those things that we can really control. Like Curt says, your finances are kind of set and you can do some control of that. But, my feeling right now is the time that I give to community, but it's working out how I'm going to spend that. Because, Curt, you said something about friends and having a bigger community. Well, I'm hearing from a lot of people that I want deeper connections. I don't need more connections. I have an opportunity to go deeper. But now is, if we have that time, we can go deeper, or we can increase them. I don't know. It's a work in progress. Adam, to you, answer that for yourself.
You mentioned in yours, Dale, the social aspect and your community, that you're looking to grow your community, and then Curt, you mentioned it as well, that maybe yours might be stable or static. It's not like it's moving up or down or in and out, whatever. I got confronted with a change in work. I was in a role where I was the head of a team, a couple dozen people, and man, the type of environment we got to create was highly collaborative, high energy. It was so enriching, well beyond, punching the clock. And when I stepped out of that role, I'm still on the same team and I'm no longer in charge of it. It was interesting to see those relationship dynamics change when I wasn't in charge. And it made me realize that I had a few that were close to me because we have a real relationship. And I had a couple or several that were close to me because of my position.
Title.
Yeah. And that was a surprise to me. And so I think that knowing that heading towards retirement is useful, considering it helps me have a proper orientation to what community really looks like for me. And not just based on position or status. It's life-giving relationships are important. And you mentioned, Dale, about deepening relationships. And I think the best advice I could give anybody in that regard is, yes, acquire relationships, but make a priority to deepen relationships. Mm-hmm. So, Dale, tell us about our guest today.
Today's friend of the Redirect podcast is Dr. Charla Weiss, who I met, I think, 6 years ago on our trip to Israel. Dr. Weiss served as an executive director for several human services organizations in the San Francisco Bay Area, including a federally funded agency that supports homeless children and families. She's worked as a consultant domestically and internationally and has taught at universities and medical colleges. Most recently, Dr. Weiss retired from Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, where she championed health equity and disparity initiatives aligned with the hospital's mission. Charla holds a Ph.D. in psychology and education from the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, a master's degree in administration from the football powerhouse Indiana University, and a bachelor's degree in sociology and music from Olivet College. Charla is quite active in the community, serving as board chair for the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra and board member for Undivided, which is a nonprofit that believes in a world where all people flourish and human dignity is a gift that we all enjoy. Charla also focuses on her identity and purpose and recognizes that retirement is not an ending, but a deliberate recomposition of life, having fewer obligations and deeper intention. Charla, thank you so much for joining us today on the Redirect podcast. And boy, this couldn't be more dead on to the start of our conversation.
Thank you for the invitation.
So tell us about your career.
Which one? She's got goodness gracious. That's like reading the who's who.
No, goodness.
I'm saying career
impressive.
as a whole thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. That's a lovely introduction. If I was thinking, wow.
Well, you lived it.
Wow, you should be tired.
I should be tired. It is interesting. When I think about my career, it was not intentional. I was not one of those 5 or 6 year olds who said, when I grow up, I'm going to. I just think that. In fact, I spent a lot of time sitting in the corner with a dunce hat because I was always creating community within the classroom, and my teachers did not always appreciate that. They were more on task than I. I also don't think I thought that, because what is not mentioned here is I spent the first 12 years of my life, from 18 months to age 12, as an African-American living on a Native American boarding school campus in South Dakota.
What an interesting set of words to put together in a sentence.
All true. My father fought in World War II and returned from the conflict. And at this time, the country was a segregated country. And because of segregation, his community did not have formal education past the 8th grade for African Americans. So he joined the service when he was about 17, 18 years old, leaving, formal education in middle school. He was very talented with his hands, and so he was a carpenter and a mason. So he was a Buffalo soldier actually in Europe and Italy. And so he was part of those troops that would go forward to build bridges or blow up bridges and to create pathways for the tanks and the servicemen to proceed through Europe.
Wow.
Oh.
Upon return to the United States, he wanted to find a career teaching industrial arts, but he could not find a position. And so finally he got a position from what was called the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I use the term Indian because that's what it was called, under the Department of Education. The infinite wisdom of that Department of Education was to send my father, my mother, myself, and my sister, who was 18 months younger than I, to Flanders, South Dakota, which is one of the few Native American boarding school campuses through the West and the Midwest. So what the government did was that they would have sites throughout these locations, and they would offer the opportunity for Native children to leave their homes and to be bused to these locations. So that's where I lived. That my childhood memory is my father and all the faculty members, the teachers, would get on big yellow buses and leave in the fall, and they'd be gone about 7 to 10 days, and all those buses would come back because they've gone to all the different reservations, the Sioux, Cheyenne, Cherokee, and so forth. And so they dip down into, so it's North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, whatever, and then bring them back. I, not of any Native American blood, went to the city school Flanders, all maybe 3,000 or 4,000. So my sister and I and another boy, Terry, we were the only African American children in this school. Now remember, this is the 1950s, early 60s.
In South Dakota?
In South Dakota.
Wow.
My joke is when our family of 4 came to South Dakota, we probably tripled the black population of the school. That then and probably now. So anyway, I was, fortunately, God's given me a pretty good brain. And so I just remember school was I didn't think of it as easy. I was just obedient. You got homework, you did your homework, you passed it in, you got back and forth. But anyway, so I didn't really think about a career. My mother was a nurse, a hospital-trained nurse, and so she was a nurse, and my father, taught on the campus. So there were no academic dreams, but just to know that my role was to be a good student and to do what I was supposed to do, go to school, and then come home. My mother was very protective of the girls, my sister and I, because I think she was concerned about being African American in this community, in the state, raising girls in the presence of Native Americans, and nothing about Native Americans, but outside the culture of what she was raised in. She was raised in Oklahoma. So I, kind of passed through that. And then I remember in middle school, my mother said, Charles, we need to get these girls back so they kind of know who they are. So my father at that point in time had gotten a degree in social work. And so we moved to Saginaw, Michigan. Saginaw, Michigan, this is probably late 60s, still had not desegregated the schools formally. As we know, the national law was to desegregate, but what I did not know, and I don't think people know, that communities were kind of asked to do it, but not really forced to do it.
Yeah, they weren't compelled, so there's some lagging in that compliance.
There was definitely some lagging, exactly. And so we moved into that community, and I think probably within months, serendipitously, the federal government did say, okay, you're going to have to do something here. So instead of forcing it necessarily, they went to the community, the Black community, and said, okay, we want you to volunteer those kids. We're not going to go to a certain neighborhood. We're not going to go to a certain school. Wow. You all just kind of decide who you're going to send. So within my household, my parents volunteered me, but not my sister, who's a year younger than I. So I was volunteered to go to be part of the desegregation of a large urban all-white high school.
Was that because they felt you had the abilities to deal with that situation, or they just did eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and you were picked to be in that environment?
In my family. I was raised in a family who didn't ask questions as to why decisions are being made.
Okay.
So it wasn't like, oh, why do I have to do it? We're not her.
Okay. Okay.
And in retrospect, I'm sure that was the decision that, they figured that I was able to be at 14 socially mature enough to handle the stress, to academically succeed, because certainly you did not want to send someone to this type of environment for whom the environment would overwhelm them and they could not succeed.
Yeah, they were putting you in a difficult situation. And I wish we had time to explore this topic a lot, because I find it very interesting that your parents, when being asked to volunteer, they said yes. We'll volunteer one of our children. That's an interesting thing, because there's a lot of content out there about how difficult those integrations really were. And you probably have a lot of stories to tell about that.
Yeah. So again, the whole career. So my career was built on being in situations of being an other and having to represent. So by the time I thought, okay, what am I going to do with my life in high school? So again, I went to high school. I did graduate highly ranked. I did that which I knew my family expected me to do. And I also knew that I was representing the success of possibility of African American being successful in a predominantly white, highly academically charged environment. So I was a pianist, and I loved music. And so I actually I got a scholarship to Interlochen.
Oh my gosh.
National Music Camp.
Yeah.
And so that entered me into the whole world of, I love this. And so Olivet College you mentioned I went to Olivet College, as a small music conservatory. And so I won scholarship to that. Went in as a music major, voice. Decided there's a lot of great voices out there, and mine's not one of them. No matter how much time I spend in the practice room. So anyway, I graduated as a keyboard minor, sociology major. And this wonderful dean of students said, you should go on to grad school. So he's the one who put me into grad school. My parents had, at that point, they knew that I was like mine. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew I wasn't going to go home. I wasn't going to follow my path of my parents. So anyway, I just ended up kind of being academic. So I went to Indiana University, which I guess people now say is a football.
Yeah, recently. It's recent.
That's what Scott would say.
I didn't even know there was an arena at campus when I was there. And so I fell in love with academics and learning and education. And then I became a college administrator for a while. And then I just kept going, like, what more is there? I really am a curious person. So I said, I'm into, purpose, connection, and curiosity. I'm very academically curious. And then I ended up in Indiana, and I married my husband, which was a curiosity. For those who don't know or haven't seen a picture of me, as an African-American woman in the 70s, and I reluctantly fell in love with a 6'5" white guy.
I think God has a sense of humor, don't you?
Well, a sense of humor. Then the other thing is, as I wrote down my purpose, connection, and curiosity, I underscored I'm also a woman of great faith. And so I'm going to read a definition of faith that I found. And my definition is, faith is a deliberate choice that moves beyond belief and action, requiring determination, courage, and a willingness to push through discomfort and fear.
I like that.
And I can tell you, I know Scott was my deliberate choice, because I didn't go to school looking for an MRS degree. In fact, my mother says, Charla, you really like school, and I guess you're bright, and I just don't think you'll ever marry, because no one wants to be involved with that. And so I wasn't looking for a marriage. I really wasn't. So he was a deliberate choice. Moving beyond belief into action, I believed that I could partner with him, but I had to be determined, because it was fighting the stream. Because again, this country was like, oh, we don't think we want to do this. I had a courage, and I was willing to fight through the discomfort and fear. There was a great deal of fear. In fact, again, career, I knew I had a career, but my marriage to him was like, okay, so do you understand we're going to lose jobs? We're going to have people ostracize us. Our families are not going to be happy. And we are going to have this forever fairy tale marriage that is really going to be sometimes uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's inherent conflict in that.
Yeah. And Scott said yes. So I said, okay.
Wait a second. We missed a point. Where did you guys meet?
Indiana.
No, I know, but what was the situation? How did you guys actually meet?
So I'm a little older than Scott, and so I came as a graduate student, and I lived in the residence hall. I was running around the residence halls there, and he was, and he'll say, he was on my staff. And this is how we met. So I came from Olivet College is a Christian college. So it was slacks on Saturday afternoon, starched, nicely worn, but you had to change them for convocation on Saturday night and certainly never on a Sunday. And so it's a pretty strict Christian education. And I fell into it. I loved it. So then I go to IU in the late 60s, early 70s, and there was
Very much not that.
There was all kinds of stuff going on. And so I came to campus as a graduate student. I was going to be heading up this team. I went to a party to meet the staff. And I was given an address. I went, and this is literally true. I knocked on the door. It got really quiet behind the door. I thought, well, that's interesting. And so finally the door opened up, and Scott said, hello. And I said, hi, I'm Charla Weiss, maiden name. He went, oh, shuts the door. And comes back and draws me to the room. Now, again, this is the late 60s, early 70s. And I thought, I think there's some underage drinking.
Yeah, they're trying to hide Animal House in the corner right now.
Thank you. Exactly. So I walked across the room, literally, and sat in a chair in the corner with my purse and my skirt and thought, Lord, what has happened? So that's how I met Scott. It was his apartment, his party, his staffing. And then he said they went to the other corner and looked at me and said, she'll never last. Well, I did.
Good for you.
I did. But that's how we met.
Scott in his appearance on our podcast, which was season 2, episode 11, he referenced going out to a coffee shop at 10 o'clock and just having a conversation with you until the owner came up and said, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you have to leave.
Yeah.
And he said at that point, he knew that you guys were destined to be with one another.
Yeah, that is an actually true story. And I just remember the whole time I enjoyed his company. I was of the politics, blacks.
Yeah.
I just had lived a different life. It wasn't horrible. And he just was head over heels. And I'm sure he also told me. And I made him fight for it. It took like 18 months. We were at different schools. We graduated, things like that. And
well, as Adam said, he definitely traded up.
Yeah. So my whole career. So I started, and then we married, and then we started traveling about. As you know, we lived overseas for about 11 years. Mm-hmm. But I also, because I am academically curious, I started a PhD. Our first job after we married in Indiana, we went to Colorado State, where I'd been recruited. Scott also joined me there, obviously, and got a job. And then while I was at Colorado State, I was recruited at the University of Michigan to head up their honors college. And also start a PhD. And so then I took us to University of Michigan, where he then also got a degree. Mm-hmm. And so we just started. And so my career is basically based on curiosity, academic achievement. And I'm also a yes person when it comes to opportunities. I always think my faith will carry me through. I have fallen on my face, but for some reason, I'm pretty buoyant, and goodness gracious, God has given me a really even personality. I don't get down too quickly, and I always think there's a way forward. I also partnered well. Scott has been an excellent partner.
Yeah. So with you guys traveling all over the world, my goodness. I mean, and was that driven because of Scott's background? So yeah. Scott would get the job, then would you then find work in those areas because you had this ability to be curious?
Yeah, that's good. So I became a dangling spouse, as I called myself. So we went from Cincinnati to Sydney, Australia. At that point in time, we had 2 children, 5 and 10. Mm-hmm. And so I was grossly concerned about taking the children outside the United States. Again, not only Americans, expats. Our oldest son, as you maybe know, is Hispanic by birth. He's our adopted son of Hispanic at birth. And then our daughter is a DNA interracial child. And so he was in Australia, and I was very curious. In fact, going to that choice, I had said, we're going. Because he said, I'm not too sure we can do this. Oh, no, honey. If you get the job, we're going.
Nice.
And he went, oh, okay. He was qualified for it. It was good.
You said you say yes to opportunities. It sounds like you were saying yes for his opportunity.
Yes,
for
right.
him.
For him. Exactly. And he said, and I think his concern was me, the kids. And I said, we can do this. God has given us opportunity. We will walk through this door. And he went, okay, let's go for it. And so that's right. So I became a dangling spouse. Fortunately, I had already started my PhD. And I was collecting data and finishing, I was trying to finish my research chapters and so forth. And so when we went to Australia, I just took all my materials with me and so forth. Like if there's ever a fire, it would be my materials and then my children and then my pictures.
And eventually Scott.
And eventually Scott. Yeah, eventually Scott. Well, I just figured he'd get there. And so I went to Australia with that intention. And then we were in Australia for 2.5 years. And I really did focus I was flying back and forth, you can imagine, from Australia to Ann Arbor. And then I was really trying to make sure the kids were grounded because even though it's an English-speaking country, it's very British. They went to private British schools, very uniformed. And again, we were fish out of water. So I had to be their constant contact. We were always learning. And Scott always was deep into his job, which I wanted him to do. And then from Australia, we ended up going to Hong Kong. Another situation where he says, I'm not too sure. I said, oh, no, we can do this. And I was just curious, like, what would it be like to live in a country? This is because we landed there under British rule. Hong Kong, is under British rule, but very close to China. In fact, we had initially thought of going to China, but one of the concerns was my son is asthmatic. And so if you know anything about China's still coal-fueled for energy. And I thought this is just asthma waiting to attack what he has. So we were in Hong Kong. And so that also, and so there I finished my degree and I started my own firm. I started an educational firm, a psychological counseling firm there. So I was always thinking, what will I do? How can I I think you talked about success, but keep myself emotionally healthy. And not be over dependent upon him for my emotional stability. How I can create community for myself and for my children, and also for him as expats, and also how to keep myself physically fit and not succumb to some of the vices that many times expat families, particularly spouses, many times it's women. I don't hear about dangling spouses. So I was always thinking, how do I reinvent myself in a healthy way? How do I not regress on anything? How do I model to my children that despite who you are racially, you can find a way, you can find community, and it doesn't have to be defined by your race, but don't forget who you are.
Right. I think this would be a good time to take a quick break. If you're enjoying our show, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to comment. And if you like what you're hearing, leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback not only makes our day, but helps other listeners discover our content. Your support through listening, sharing, following, and reviewing means the world to us and helps our podcast grow. Thanks so much for being part of the Redirect family.
And Dale, before we get back to today's conversation, wanted to let everybody know about a bonus episode of the Redirect podcast that will only be released on YouTube. So not on Apple Podcasts, not on Spotify, only on YouTube this July 4th. It's the Folds of Honor event where we went to TPC Rivers Bend. So come give it a watch, only on YouTube, July the 4th.
What a phenomenal platform moving into your redirection and starting to think about retirement at some point in your great story. What were the key elements when you started thinking about redirect?
I started thinking about redirecting prior to COVID, not knowing that COVID is going to happen. But I had always assumed I'd probably retire about 62, 65 maybe. Well, I blew past those. And then when COVID came, I knew I wasn't going to retire in COVID because that didn't look healthy to me because it was very isolating. But I loved my job in Cincinnati, at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. So when I started thinking about retirement, I said, well, eventually I'm going to have to retire. And so I thought I need to put some thought to that because I had not seen anyone to retire, I think, well. So I need to put a plan together. I need to figure out what I want to do, how I'm going to do it. I also knew that my retirement was not going to involve in my children's lives. My children, 2 of the children don't live in the Cincinnati area. My youngest one was still pretty young. I did not anticipate any grandchildren, and that true has been all my children have made decisions not to have children. 3 of them. All my Cincinnati friends, they all have their children either they've been gone and they've all come back, which is a mystery to me. Like in 10 years, they've all left and they've all come in from California, from New York, from Florida, from Texas. They've all come back and they're all populating, right? And so their retirement now really involves, in many aspects, rightfully so, visiting with their kids, grandchildren, babysitting, vacations, chilling. And I don't have that. So I knew that wasn't going to be part of my life. So I made a plan. I said, okay, I need to look into perhaps some community work. I need to see, I didn't like go out to shop for boards because that's not how that works. But I just happened to, again, the good Lord sat me down beside someone who had some interest in the CSU symphony. Do you like music? Yes. You know anything about music? Well, actually, I do.
Yeah, a little.
That helps.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
Have you heard of Interlocking?
Have you heard of Interlocking? You know, I went to conservatory. And so I just started, as I was working, venturing out, because I was a leader, so I could go out for a meeting and if I had venture out, I thought, this is what I want to do, and saying no to certain things that didn't fit into my pattern, but start saying yes to the things. But I put like a 3-year plan. And in fact, I had a big bulletin board. I put these magnets around my bulletin board, and I had counted out my 3 years, a magnet for each month for 3 years. And I take a magnet for a visual reminder. How much more time do I have to plan this?
Wow. Look at the countdown clock.
It's a countdown clock. Now, what happened was Children's and God pulled it. So I was in Germany, and I got a notice in the fall of 23 that they were the hospital was going to change its pincer program in such a way that if I stayed much longer due to my income, my salary, the time I'd been there, I was going to perhaps lose part of my pension. So I thought, okay, so God has been saying to me, Charla, I really want you to retire and do something else. I said, no, Lord, I have other things to do. I don't want to do this right now. And he says, okay, well, I'll let you play around and have some board work while you're working. Okay, thank you, Lord. But I really want you to retire. No, Lord, I want them to do. So then God said, great, I'll take your money. Okay, I'll retire tomorrow. So I did. Within 4 months, I put my notice in and I retired. And it's a shameful story, but that is because I had really planned to retire.
It's human. It's a very human story.
I had planned to retire in June of 24, and I left in January 24. And it was a great decision. I mean, Lord knew what he was doing, so I really appreciate that. So anyway, so I plan. I really do try to look out and plan. It gives me comfort and a sense of control.
So you seem to embrace curiosity. So that idea to go out and find that next community was easy for you.
Mm-hmm.
What advice could you give to somebody that may not have that confidence?
It's hard for me to walk in someone else's shoes for the level of confidence. And I was just scratching some notes because there's a question you actually asked about how do you do that? I am a natural extrovert, and I feel grateful for that. Most people I interact with are not, and I see them struggling with that. It's like, how do you put yourself out there in a way that's authentic, that's not exhausting, and is actually energy giving versus energy sucking, right?
That's a difficult series of steps. Someone who's introverted, to step out is hard all by itself, and then the amount of energy it takes to do that is really challenging. Their battery gets drained very easily, and then to find a way to be energized and let it be life-giving is a tough set of circumstances.
That's a nice summary. I agree. And given that I have empathy for that, but I have no sensitivity to that because that's not me. The few people I've seen do it typically partner. And for the introverts who have my life, I've said, how about you join with so-and-so? Or I'll do a handoff. Say, I will take you, have lunch, introduce you to someone. And then I've already prepped that person. Say, you will now introduce Sally into this group, and you're not going to leave them. You're going to stay and help their relationship.
You're shepherding them at that point.
Thank you. I guess that's a shepherding, because I think we all need to be partnered with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Even I, of late, it's been interesting. I do so many things in symphony, and as high energy as I think, as God says I am as an introvert, I get tired as well as constantly introducing myself, constantly pretending I care about idle chat at a coffee hour. So I can't imagine what it's like for someone, but I do a lot of shepherding. I just think it's part of my role, and it's part of one of those purposes that's got, okay, I give you energy and I give you personality. So you're going to get these two people together and you're going to shepherd that relationship until you and that person can do a send-off. And sometimes actually it doesn't work.
Sure.
And so then also you have to prepare the person or be around for when the relationship doesn't work or the connection to the organization doesn't work, and just try to figure out, like, what can you do next? Or I'll be that person's +1 for a period of time. But it is hard. It really, because I know how hard it is for me sometimes, so I can't imagine when it's hard for someone else who's not an extrovert. It just kind of comes to me.
Can we jump in?
Yeah.
I'd like to zero in on this for just a second, because I think this is a really important thing. We have some listeners who are going to say, boy, I wish I had a shepherd. I wish I had someone to do some of that introduction. For the listeners who are looking for community and just don't know how to break that ice, maybe they're not the naturally extroverted person, how would you advise someone who you think to be an introvert to seek out? They have to step out and seek out that extroverted person to be that shepherd. Help me, take me under your wing, take me with you to a given event and introduce me to people. Any advice or commentary on how to continue that? I think that's such an important thing. Any more words you can share on that?
I like that question. It is interesting. Again, I get tickled when someone says, Charla, can I have lunch with you? Can we go to a coffee shop? After this meeting, do you have 30 minutes? I mean, oh, sure. I mean, I'll say yes. And I just kind of get tickled, like, oh, there's something you want from me?
This is exciting.
This is exciting. I kind of get juiced by that. Okay, I can do that. Yeah. So I think if that person can identify someone in the community, either a church community or PTA, your neighborhood, wherever you go to be in community with other people, I'm sure they run across somebody who's like a little over the top in their enthusiasm, who always shows up, who has hands in the air. I don't know if you do that anymore. But approach that person, because if they truly are an extrovert, they will be more than happy to find a time to sit down and talk to you. That's just kind of who we are. And then, come with a question saying, oh, guys, what are you going to talk about? So if you sit there and stare at me, it's like, oh my goodness. But if you say, okay, I have 2 questions for you, I'm like, oh, this is good. I'm leaning forward. I've got good eye contact, my feet on the ground, because I'm going to help.
And as a function of loneliness and the suffering that people will go through, especially post-career, being isolated, the hardship, the pain, the discomfort, the loneliness that you'll endure is so much more impactful and harder to deal with than just asking for help. Going to somebody that's awkward, it's difficult for a lot of people, but putting yourself out there and saying, hey, help me, break the ice on that. Listeners, please, if that's you, find somebody and break through on that.
I agree, 100%.
You mentioned that you like to plan, and you had this whiteboard and magnets moving around and such. And when we had Scott on, he referenced about you guys going away to New York City for Christmas one year, and that you did some New York City things. But then you also sat down, like you're just sort of talking about with a stranger, but you're sitting down with your husband and taking a look at the year 2026. And you came up with, as he says, these aren't resolutions, these were intentions. So he shared with us his, and I'm curious, what were your intentions, or were they a joint situation that you both agreed to do what you both agreed to do?
My dear husband is very structured. And I say,
hello.
Her eyes could not have rolled any further back in her head.
It's so interesting. He is a very big person, big, broad person. I mean, that's why he's been a CEO. He can put together the strategy and the vision and the mission. He's got it, and he will marshal the troops through it. And I'm like, so did you notice the lights are still off? Did you notice we don't have this? I mean, I'm a detailed person. We built our house a couple of years ago, many years ago actually, and he didn't want to do it. And I said, oh no, because I love details, right? And he's like, okay, build a house. You got 14 months. I'll move in, basically.
Wow.
Basically, right? And I said, okay, got it. Sign this paper. Right. And that's how we roll, right? He wants a house. I'll build a house. He wanted some goals for the year. He stated them, like, okay, go for it.
I wish this was video. The energy and the
I can't play poker.
And sincerity is awesome.
So yes, he did come up with 5. Some of them were joint. Some of them were like, okay. The big one for me is connectivity. I had mentioned before that since we do not have natural connectivity, we moved to Cincinnati with no children, no grandchildren, no parents here. If you're in your mid-50s and you moved into any community with none of those connections, and we did not go to the Ohio State University,
a real sports college.
A real sports college, exactly. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It is really difficult. Think of the last time you invited someone to your home who's new to the city.
Mm.
Just think of who comes to your house. It's usually people you went to high school with, kindergarten with, you've different companies for the past 15, 20, 25 years. Very few people will introduce into their home people who they've just met.
Ouch. That's convicting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I may be wrong, but I try it all the time. All right. So we really had to dig in and start creating community with nothing to build on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still doing that, and we found a lot of it through the church. And so you can have those relationships, but then you have to build on them. In fact, I've got this little diagram on my bulletin board where you have circles. So you have your intimate circle of friends, like 3 to 5, and how much time you spend with them. Then you have the outer ring and things like that. So I'm really focusing on that because, again, I'm finding I still have to make those invitations. And people readily will come and so forth, but people are just really, because they're busy. But I still want your friendship. I still want to have that connectivity. So my focus out of the 5 things that he identified was I want to continue to be that connector and to be present for somebody. And I'm also open to new relationships. We've just recently developed a relationship with a couple that we used to see at a restaurant on Sunday mornings before church. And we see the same couple every single week. They sit at their table, we sit at our table. The staff knows where to see us.
How many times do you have to see that before you think, this is a thing, I got to bridge the gap here?
And that's what I did. So I went and said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I just want to introduce myself. He said, and he used to wear, he always wears a Michigan hat. I said, see? He went to Michigan. Well, sure enough, he's an attorney. He was trained at the University of Michigan Law School. So I introduced herself, and we've become friends.
I love it.
Well, and they're in their 80s. They're the sweetest couple. And so now we see each other, right? And the staff says, oh, where were you last week? They were there, but they were looking for you. And it's the cutest little relationship. But who does that? I mean, I do, because I have to.
Mm.
I can sit in my silo and be lonely, and I don't deal well with that. I'm going to go this afternoon because one of them just had some surgery, and they're kind of struggling. They don't have any kids in town, and I have energies. I'm going to go over and see them, and then we're going to stop by and so forth because they're fine, but they're like, oh, you come to see us? I went, yeah, I'll come and see you. I said, why not? And they went, okay, so...
What planet are you from?
People don't do that anymore.
No, they don't. They don't.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I respect that. It might be feared, but they need somebody. I see them at breakfast every single Sunday. They are not Christians. They're Jewish. They're kind. They're in their 80s. I got this, Lord, because someday someone's going to see Scott and I in our 80s, but they need help.
I love for our listeners to hear the effort of creating community and being curious, and what gifts to have. Your emotional IQ, I can tell, is off the charts. Off the chart. Have you ever gone through that emotional IQ
Yeah,
test?
I have. Yeah.
And I just think your knowledge of relationships and combined with the curiosity, I think is a recipe for a redirected life.
Yeah. Connectivity, community.
Yeah.
Humans talking to humans is an imperative in life. And we have found ourselves anchored in technology and epic levels of loneliness and disconnection amongst all age cohorts, and especially for people after they leave their career. So it's so important to find people to commune with.
And they can be new people.
Mm-hmm.
I still stay in touch with 4 of my teammates. Because I came into Cincinnati so much older and so forth, as I stated my career, when I retired when I was 69, my team was much younger than I, and I wasn't going to be their mother, right? I said, I'm not your mother, I'm your supervisor, and I'm your manager and so forth, but I am very committed to helping the younger generation. They have a much tougher social, economic, and career path than I could ever experience. Some of their jobs won't even be here in 5 years because of AI in so many different ways. And also, these young people are all coupled and starting families. But my purpose is just to know I am here for you as I once was as your manager, but I'm now here for you as an older friend. And I'm also saying that I need to know what makes you tick.
Our stories are very similar. I don't have any grandkids. I'm 5.5 years here in Cincinnati. So everything you're talking about, I'm like, Charla, I'm going to call you on up and say, can I meet you for lunch? Because I definitely want to sit down with you and get your secret recipe for all that. But
she can introduce you to some people too, I bet.
I hope so. I
got to hook up for symphony tickets.
Oh, you do. You do. So, now I want to have breakfast with you.
But then also you bring up another aspect as far as this generational thing. And we're in the process right now of putting things together to have a podcast about bridging the gap between generations. But you're so right that things are different. Yeah. And the AI thing, in doing the analysis of generations, this generation beta, which is either 1 year or unborn at this point, they're going to be living with AI assistance. And that's so hard for me to think about. But we have to start preparing ourselves to have conversations with that because it's so different than what we are accustomed to.
Yeah, Gen Z doesn't know life without cell phones. Gen Alpha, namely Gen Beta, won't know life without AI.
Yeah.
And it's going to impact, as a psychologist, I'm very concerned about our interactive behavior between and among individuals. Mm-hmm. One of my friends was a dean at a local university, and she said, the freshman class that came in after COVID passed, so let's say a freshman class of 2021, they required the students to go see their advisors. And the advisors started commenting in the faculty meetings that the students were having a difficult time having eye contact with them.
Wow. And basic interpersonal skills.
Basic interpersonal skills. I worked with recruiters at Cincinnati Children's. They talked about many times people didn't even come in for an interview. For a coveted position. I'm not talking about the doctors, but hospitals more than just doctors. And the difficulty of getting people just to interact or tell me a little bit about yourself. And they'd read their resume because they don't know how to spontaneously interact. So it's only going to get more serious. And so then one of you mentioned the degree of loneliness. They are the most connected on these phone devices.
Connected in quotes.
But if they were to have an accident in their bathroom at 1:00 in the morning, they wouldn't know who to call to actually respond in person.
We've seen some interesting stats about the number of people going to interviews under the age of 25 are bringing their parents to the interview.
And the parents came.
It's a problem.
Wow. Thank you so much. And Scott was so right. You are very, very special. And thank you very much for being with us today, sharing your story. And we didn't even get to the part of being a woman in a professional career.
Right.
All right. And all the obstacles and the barriers that you broke there. But I thank you so much for being with us today. And we are definitely going to schedule you to come back and have some more conversation if you'd like.
Well, yeah, because I'm a good student. I have all my notes here.
Didn't even get to them.
I didn't get to my notes. I can leave them with you.
No, we like to have the conversation.
Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on. I knew this was going to be great. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the invitation.
Such an impressive person. Your drive, your intellect. It's awesome. Thanks for sharing it with our listeners, and thanks for joining us on the Redirect Podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Redirect Podcast. We would like to thank the University of Cincinnati 1819 Innovation Hub for allowing us to record our episodes at the eSports Innovation Lab recording studio. Don't forget to tell your friends about the Redirect Podcast and have them follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Instagram. Want more information? Do you have a question for Curt, Dale, or Adam? Or would you like us to consider a topic that interests you for a future podcast? Send us an email at info@redirect-u.com. Remember, the journey isn't over. It's just redirected. There's purpose in your life. Find it and do something about it. Hey, I've got one more comment. The Redirect Podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We engage in an open, honest conversations about personal growth, life transitions, and the lessons we've learned through our own experiences. While we speak as experts in our own lives, we are not licensed therapists, medical professionals, or certified coaches. The content shared on the Redirect podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of qualified professionals for any physical, mental, or emotional concerns that you may have. We're grateful to share this space with you and hope that our stories inspire reflection and connection. If you're in need of more support, we encourage you to connect with a trusted professional who can help.